Hello there, and thanks for watching. This is a short video reviewing one of these ubiquitous PXP, PvP games consoles that you see on eBay. They're absolutely all over eBay. I spotted one the other day and I thought after a short time that I would buy one, and it was quite a story actually, because I bought this on the 19th of January. It cost $11.99 and included free first class postage, so pretty low price. And unfortunately by the following Friday I still hadn't received it, and I messaged the seller and I got a story about how Royal Mail cocked up a batch or something like that, which I find a little bit hard to believe. The Royal Mail generally, for all the negative press they get sometimes, are generally pretty good at delivering stuff, so I imagine more likely it's something to do with the seller and they're a drop shipper of some kind and they didn't get the batch sent. But I may be wrong, who knows. But more annoyingly, when I finally did get my console, I had to pay £3 to go and pick it up from the post office, sorting office, because the seller underpaid the postage, which didn't put me in the best of moods, I must admit. So yeah, £3 I had to pay just for the privilege of getting my console. And yeah, I wasn't too chuffed about that. I emailed the seller, who I noticed had got a few negatives in the meantime, and they promised to pay it back to me, but as of yet I haven't received it, the £3, so you better get that sorted soon. So there you go, here it is, the console itself inside the box. Quite a nice neat little package. So just leaving the console aside for 1 second. Also got this, which is a USB cable. You can connect it to the computer but it doesn't do anything. This is purely, I believe, for charging the console. And one of these cartridges you got with it, which apparently has one shy of 1 million games on it, which is pretty unbelievable and is in fact not true. Certainly not 1 million individual games anyway, it's just the same games repeated ad infinitum. And then here we have the instructions, which are helpfully in English as well as Chinese. So let's get on to the console itself. Take it out of this. And there you go, random colour, and fortunately I got blue, which is very nice. And as you can see, it's very obviously styled on the PSP. Even got the little tie here for a something to put around your wrist, a grip for your wrist. On the back, instead of a UMD, that's where the lithium battery went, which I've already installed. And as you can see, one speaker there. There's also a speaker on the front. Also on the front you've got this, the directional, I don't think it's a directional pad because it's 4 different buttons, and you've got the 4 buttons to play with as well, and as you can see from the symbols on them, that's fairly much ripped from the PlayStation symbols as well. Also you've got a reset button, a select button and a start button, although the select and the start button seem to do the same thing, so I'm not quite sure why there's all those buttons on there. On the top, that's not an earphone jack, that's an AV jack, socket rather, for plugging this into your big screen TV or one of your TVs. So if you get fed up with the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4, you can plug this in and play it on your big screen instead. Also a slot for the cartridge, and obviously there's your input for for charging it, the USB cable. And then underneath, on-off switch and volume. So no sign of a switch to adjust the contrast or the screen at all. So let's get it switched on and have a look. Opens up with a very nice bucolic scene, presumably of China, feudal China or Japan maybe, which is very nice. And press the start button. Turn up a bit. So we've got a nice little tune playing, and we've got our 6 different genres. Now there's a lot of wackiness going on with the genres here. First of all, as you can see, we've got adventure game, fighting game, sports game, shooting game, which I assume is shooting game, as it's a picture of a gun, racing game, and puzzle game. And there's a lot of rather strange generalisation gone here. For instance, if we click on fighting game, okay, you've got Super Street Fighter, which is fair enough, pretty much a fighting game. But Spy versus Spy, I've not played much of Spy versus Spy, but I don't think you can really call that a fighting game. But some of the others are okay. Ya Kung Fu, Muscle, never heard of that, but that obviously looks like a NES game, which a lot of these are. And as you can see, this claims that it's got 555 games, but if we scroll back to the last few games, you'll see that it's just the same games repeated over again. So it's a bit of a con, that, to be honest, to claim that all those games are on there. I've had a look and they're all the same, so it's just the same games repeated over and over again. But the eBay listing does say that it's only got 150 games on it, so they're not quite so inaccurate there on the eBay listing. They've kind of got it a bit more accurately done. So there you go. Let's have a look. So quite a few different genres, as I say. Perhaps the most interesting is the puzzle game, because if we click on this, so we've got MULV or MOLV, whatever that is, Plane, and then we've got Angry Birds, Angry Bird 1, 2 and 3. Now Angry Bird 1 and Angry Bird 2 are just basically platform games, as you can see, very similar to Mario. And Angry Birds 3 is the game which tries to replicate the famous mobile game, which is a very strange game because obviously this console isn't touchscreen, it's all controlled via the buttons. So to have this game replicated on a console such as this, it's a bit odd. So obviously that was something I was keen to find out how they worked it, and looks quite familiar. Let's turn it down a bit. So yeah, you control the birds, the angle of the bird itself by just pressing this and then pressing fire. Oh, I've missed. And yeah, a very strange and odd version of Angry Birds. Oh, I've got a couple of them there. So yeah, that is a bit of a weird game, to be honest. A bit odd. Can't see myself playing that for too long. So yeah, lots of copyright busting games on this, as you might expect, I suppose, given where it's come from. It does have quite a few decent arcade games on it, which is really nice. I'll give you an example. Raid on Bungling Bay, I think, was an old Commodore 64 game, which I believe was also converted to the NES, which would explain why it's on here. Most of these are conversions of NES games, but games such as Galaga, you know, these are timeless games. So I think really you're never really going to be bored if you've got this to play. So let's just have a little play on this. As you can hear, the sound is pretty much authentic, the graphics are fine. Obviously, if you're the sort of person who emulates via a JXD or one of the PSP itself, I suppose, or one of the other formats, you're going to have plenty of these games available anyway. So yeah, that's quite nice. There's quite a few other old-fashioned arcade games. It says it's Defender, but it's actually Defender 2 it's got as well, and there's also Pac-Man and a Space Invaders clone as well. So there's a few games like that packed onto it, which is always going to entertain you. The cartridge itself that you come with it, amusingly named Random Special, and like the games that are on it, it has a ridiculous claim, and they're very similar games to what are on the console itself. Good and bad things. I suppose you could say good is the price. It's only $11.99. It feels incredibly light, but I guess that's a good thing, really. If you're going to be carrying it around, you don't want anything that's too heavy. The sound, as I mentioned, is really quite good. I'm going to turn it up now so we can have a listen. And it's really quite clear, and I've not found any game yet in which it distorts. And it kind of puts to shame a little bit similar efforts from like the Mega Drive consoles that you can get, which really have not the greatest sound when turned up a bit. So I was quite impressed with the sound on it. The screen itself is not great, to be honest. Rather strangely, it's advertised on eBay as 2.7 inches, the screen from there to there, diagonally of course you measure. And then in the manual itself it says it's 2.8 inches, but then when I measured it, it's actually 2.9 inches. So it's a little bit bigger than they're claiming, which is a bit daft. But yeah, the screen is not great. It's okay, as you can see, it's fairly clear now, but I've got a light just above us, so it's fairly well lit at the moment. In darker areas, you can hardly see anything at all. And a lot of the games that are on it, like the NES games, the graphics are really small, which doesn't help. So if you're in any way a bit long-sighted or anything, I can imagine it'd be quite difficult to play this. Bad things, one of the major drawbacks of it is that it doesn't have any ability to put any extra games on. You can connect it up to your computer, but as far as I could see, that was all you could do. You couldn't access the drive or anything on it, or the internal memory. The cartridge itself slots into there, as you can see. and it has probably another 30 or 40 games on it, as well as the ones in the internal memory. But I didn't find any other cartridges available on eBay, and unless you can make your own cartridge, I suppose, which is possible, it's not going to be very easy to put new games or new ROMs onto this. So it is kind of limited in as far as once you've burnt through the games that are on it, that's it. You're not going to have much else on it. But there are quite a few games in it, so maybe that's not quite such a bad thing. Also, this jack here, this socket here, I expected that to be a earphones socket, but it's not. It's for plugging it into the TV, as I mentioned earlier. So you're kind of reliant on the speakers, which is just as good. They're not too bad, the sound, because not having a headphone socket for something like this seems a bit odd. Which means if you do turn the sound up and you're on a train or something, you're guaranteed to annoy your fellow passengers. So really, to conclude, I think it's unlikely to appeal to hardcore gamers, really, or retro fans in particular, because although it's nice enough in itself, it doesn't really scratch the itch, I don't think, that you can easily get by downloading ROMs and putting them onto a machine like this. If it had a bit more of an open architecture and you could access it more easily, then I think it would be a great little machine. But unfortunately, limited the way it is with the games that are on it, it's not so great. And for $11.99, I suppose it's not so bad. If you've got a long train journey and you want to take something that's fairly disposable, rather than your loaded up PSP or something, then I guess it could be an option. But to be honest, for a hardcore gamer, I think it's hard to recommend it. For the casual gamer, or maybe children even, it's something that is a bit more of an option, maybe, as a little stocking filler or something, or a small present at Christmas time. It's perfectly acceptable, I think. It does its job fairly well. In that respect, I'd even possibly recommend it over some of the cheaper Mega Drive handheld consoles that you can get, because of its nice range of arcade games. But for $11.99, I don't think you can really complain of that as a small present. But as I say, for anyone that's into their emulation in particular, and a regular gamer, I think probably you'll find this put in the drawer fairly quickly and never played again. So there you go. There's my review of the 8-bit PSP, PVP, PXP, PPP, whatever they call it. Thank you for watching, and I'll post another video soon. Cheers.